Tomorrow, I'm going to come and watch a lesson, a math lesson. Share with me a little bit about what the learning is that you hope kids will get as a result of that.
The lesson tomorrow that I will show students is a lesson on using estimating to find or to multiply. And the learning I hope that they do, well, a couple of things. I always like to make sure that they understand the real world connection and understand that in life sometimes it's not reasonable to find an exact answer, or we don't want an exact answer, so we need to estimate. And then the second piece is I want them to be able to show me how they can round and then multiply together, and they should be able to do it in their head, so I'll be looking for that.
Okay.
As well.
Okay. So some estimation and then real world connections of why that's important for kids to learn.
Yes.
So you sent me some lesson plans here of what you're going to do. Just what are if you would please just kind of verbalize out what will the kids be doing with all of the lessons going on?
So I always pre-test before each lesson, and so I will know which students will be working on their own, and what that piece will look like is they're still required to watch the lesson for that day and to do the other mandatory pieces, like we have a 2-4
that everybody takes.
It actually happens the day before, so that I have time to kind of sift through them and make my groups.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll have used that information, and then tomorrow when they come in, you already know who's going to be working on their own, who's going to be working with you.
Right.
Okay. So let's talk about the group that is going to be working with you. What are some of the things that will go on with that small group?
So we usually meet up here in this space, so we're nice and close to the board. They just stay with me for a little more practice, and I kind of dismiss kids back to their seats as I see that they're getting it.
As you're checking to see how they're doing it. So as they're up here, in addition to kind of the guesstimation or the estimation answer that they might possibly get, what other things are you watching for or listening for in kids?
I watch for, we always talk about good note-taking skills, because I know in the future in math, when lessons become a lot, I can just choose to let them discuss and then click the next slide. Yeah, so it's really built in, and it does a nice job of that.
And then with a small group, it's probably pretty easy to hear their turn and talk up there fairly closely. So if you think on your on this slideshow, like one of the first slides where it's where you stop it and they turn and talk to one another, what would be some things that you'd hope at that point in the slideshow that you'd hope the kids would say?
Well, I would hope that they would remember rounding, because that's a skill that we've already taught and assessed. So I'm hoping
a piece of paper to write their stuff down,
or
but
using
more
a
just
chart. Yeah, I'm hoping to see it in their head more. Yeah.
So some little sayings that you've taught, and then some visible, being able to see that they're kind of thinking about those answers, kind of thing. How about the kids that are out here working? What would I see with these kids out here?
Well, they start by watching the lesson on their own, so they can go at their own pace. And so they'll probably have their earbuds in, watching the same thing that we are, but they
when you're up here working with kids and they're out there, how do you kind of manage that yourself, being very attentive to them but also kind of watching out here?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because that's always something that I'm looking for. Because you do wonder, are you all the way back there doing what you're supposed to be doing?
So then at the end of tomorrow's lesson, what formative assessments do you use for the whole class to know where you're going to go the next day?
So one thing I really like to use is an app called called Explain Everything, and it's kind of my closure piece as well about the math block.
Well, and it really sounds like a really nice blending of both teacher time and technology time and self-pacing and all of that. So for you personally, as a professional and somebody who cares about kids, what's something that's important for you to pay attention to in yourself as you're teaching this lesson tomorrow, either up here with the kids or monitoring these guys out here?
I think for me, I want to make sure that I'm sticking to what I planned. It's really important that we get through enrichment piece and kind of divide myself equally among everyone, which can be really hard. But those are things that I hold myself to.
So what are some tricks that you do to maintain that, to monitor that time when you're the only one in here?
Right. Well, the differentiation piece, I think, has really, really helped me, and the personalized learning piece as well, because I'm able to meet so.
Well, thank you. I look forward to coming tomorrow. What has happened for your thinking as a result of being able to kind of talk out loud to me about this lesson?
I think just hearing myself talk about why we do the things that we have in place has really been validating for me, because it's been kind of new. We especially this year, we've always had a to-do list, but I changed the way that I pre-tested this year. I changed a lot of things, just little things, and so just hearing me say out loud and thinking through it with you has really validated that these changes have been good changes and they've been effective, and I'm still always thinking of, what's next, what else
you can do. Well, thank you. I look forward to coming in.
It'll
be great. Thanks.
All right, so first thing, I would like to check in with you and your homework. So I'm going to be making my way around, and while I'm doing that, since you didn't have a DSR today, I would like you to be working on math facts. You can do that in several different ways. Before you go straight to your iPad, I need you to close your iPad. Put your eyes back on me, please. You can meet up with your math partner, sticking with those three. So repeat those three options to your table so I know you remember what they are.
Use math facts. Your face, the
Fourth graders, yesterday and the day before actually, you took a pre-test for 5-3, which asked you in the directions to estimate the products, okay? A lot of you were using the strategy that I taught you the day before, which was breaking apart, which is great. It's a great strategy to use if you want to do mental math in your head. I want you to remember that. Great strategy. Not quite the strategy that they wanted you to use when they said estimate. Okay? So a lot of you were using a strategy, but it wasn't the one that I was looking for. Okay, so today we're going to learn our new strategy of how to estimate products. Will you turn to your table mates and remind them what's a product? When I say ready, set, show me. It is the answer to a ready, set, show. Good. Showing means we don't have to speak at all. We just use our hands to show. Good. The product is the answer to a multiplication problem. Very good. So I have two people that are going to work on their own today, and that would be Ethan and Quentin. So you two need to pull out your to-do list. And all right, so guys, we are going to be on 5-3 today. So show me. Your books are open to 5-3. Your notebooks are ready to go. They're labeled. Okay, to get started, 4th grade, can you talk quickly at your table? Can you think of some real-world examples of when we would need to round some numbers just to get an estimation? We don't want an actual number, just an estimation. Talk at your table. What's a real-world example? I heard lots of great examples as I was walking around. Real world examples of when we would need to use. Those are all great examples. So we're going to take a look today at our lesson to see how can we use rounding to estimate.
To estimate and find out.
Okay, we're going to use rounding, a skill that we've already mastered. So before we get into this, let's review rounding. With a table partner or an elbow partner, will you please tell your neighbor what should we remember about rounding?
There
you go. And somebody's pulling a string at the top of our head. Very good. My ears were burning over here at this table. That's a good thing. Blue table, will you remind us, what should we remember about rounding?
5 or more.
Or less, let it rest. That is why the 5.
Estimate 3 times 115 using rounding.
Okay, this time you're going to work with an elbow partner next to you, and you are going to round 115 and multiply by 3 to get your answer. Work on that. I will be around if you're together, and then I'll let you show me that you can do it on your own with the 242. Okay? So let's take a look. Oh, that's 30.
So tell me about what your assignment was and how you think you did on it.
I think I did real good because in 3rd grade we've been working on rounding a lot and multiplication division. Because this is technically about rounding and it has some multiplication division in it. And I think I did really good on the explain ones where you explain it on the back.
So give me an example of what your explain question was.
So on this one it says Mario says he can't divide 9 things into equal groups because 9 is an odd number. Do you agree or disagree with Mario? Write your ideas, draw a picture to help you explain. Sometimes it has like extra questions you have to explain.
We are also going to be rounding to the hundreds place. Go ahead and solve. Ready. Set. Show. All iPads or whiteboards should be in the air at this moment. The estimated product is 4,200. Give yourselves 2 claps. Nice work. All right. We are going to now make a swift shift to science.
Overall, as you think about the lesson that I had a chance to see, how are you feeling about that? Other than the stuff that was out of the ordinary.
I think that I need to start considering if the slideshow is the best way to present the information, because sometimes I think that they can drag out a little long. And they're great. They do a nice job. It's called like a learning bridge, and it does a nice job of getting vocabulary in there and explaining stuff, a more efficient way to get all the content we need in less time.
So you don't feel like the video was worth the time per se that it took?
Yeah,
Maybe it could be done faster.
Yeah, or I could have just gone through and flagged maybe some important slides and skipped some others.
What are some of the things that you noticed in your kids or in the pacing of the lesson or in whatever that leads you to think that way about the video?
Towards like the end, I could kind of see some kids checking out. When there was a part in the video where it explained another strategy, another way to get to the answer, and at that point, I kind of saw, the notes stopped from some of them, and
So you did some flexibility right there.
Yeah.
I'm losing some kids.
And maybe some just
And so-
professional judgment.
Yeah. Well, we do that.
Executive call.
We do that when we start noticing kids and engagement's high. And one of the things you had mentioned in our planning conversation was that you had hoped you were going to be watching for kids taking notes. So using that as your indicator kind of helped you transition to something different. Well, having a chance to look at the evidence that I collected for you and then sorted and so forth, which ones kind of stand out for you?
Well, this first one, the creating like a respectful environment, I guess I didn't even realize that I was doing that when I was saying things like "thank you for your eyes and ears," calling on students by name instead of saying "yes, you." So that first one to me, it felt good to see that I was doing that without even realizing I was doing it.
So some validation.
Yeah.
Validation there. But if we look at yours and mine, we have some of the same things. I just thought it was entirely over here of things that one might see in a distinguished classroom. The interactions, and as I would listen in on the kids in there at the table groups as well, very much an environment where people respect one another here in this classroom.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with the way that they discuss and collaborate, especially since we do it so often in every content area. I'm always really impressed by the on-task conversations they have to do with our content and the direction that was given. And it really helped because, yes, we want to be good sharers, but we have to be good listeners too. So I'm proud to see that.
Over here at this table right here, the little guy who had his back to me, every time you said turn to your table partners, he jumped in and shared, and then the little guy who was right across from him, after the very first time, he said, "Hey, sometimes I would really like to speak first," but he said it so politely. It was so nice.
They do have specific math partners where one is A and one is B, and I can say A's go first and now B's go first. It's
Tend to jump
the conversation.
in. Any other of the components that kind of stood out for you?
There was one about the classroom layout was probably the only one I gave myself all distinguished because
Classroom environment.
classroom
Another
environment.
thing that when I talked to some students, like especially one of the students who who had done well on the pre-test, and I asked him then what he was going to, what he was able to do and so forth, was very articulate with what he could do, what he needed to do, kind of the checklist. And then I asked a couple other kids what they would do after they got done with their 242 or whatever, and they're able to show me those iPads and what they can do.
And I saw that note in here as well, and that was one thing that made me proud, that they were able to explain and know why they were doing what they were doing, because as a teacher you just always want to make sure everybody understands and knows what they're doing, and to hear kids say, I know that this is my job and I'm going to do this when I'm done, that's part of that personalized learning piece of going at your own pace and enriching, that I've been working really hard at. So I feel like because they know that it's paying off, and they know there's fluctuation at the end of math to make choices and those types of things.
So very, very validating once again.
Yeah.
So we know that those things don't typically just happen, that it's because of some thoughtfulness beforehand and some building up to it. So what are some things that you intentionally have been doing since the beginning of the year that help them know that that routine of what they should do, help them know how to the respect in the classroom? What are some of the things you intentionally did to set that up?
Some of the things I've done is just being consistent. They know that there's always going to be a pretest available. So being prepared and really working on planning and preparation and getting those to students, because they're not provided by our curriculum. So it's something that I have to make, and I have to make sure that I plan for. And then just keeping the routines consistent, so that that to-do list, the only thing that changes in that to-do list is the content on like the 242, but like they not always changing it around makes it so that they know what's coming next, and then that predictability piece as well. So yeah, I think really just planning and preparation, something that you can't see in your observation, but that takes a lot of my time, but it's definitely probably the most important piece for a smooth lesson.
Well, I'm planning in preparation for multiple days, like not just for this lesson, but to get the kids ready for knowing how to effectively work in this classroom,
right,
and so forth.
Yeah.
So this group of kids, sometimes kids, we all know that there are groups of kids who sometimes go through that are little stinkers since they started kindergarten, some who are really high flyers since they started kindergarten. How does this class compare with other classes, and with that, what have you noticed about what you've had to do to kind of adjust for them?
Even just thinking back to last year and comparing groups, it's been a big difference in abilities and behaviors. This group is more challenging. They have more needs. I rarely had a student that didn't bring their homework back last year, and I have kids that I'm probably going to start like a homework club with, because homework is a problem, and I've talked to parents about it, and it doesn't seem to be getting better. So to me, the next option would be giving them an opportunity at school to do their homework, so at least they're still getting that independent piece. So just noticing things like that and thinking, how can I help them when the needs have been so different, has been a challenge. It's made for a busier year. It's more planning, it's more preparation.
You really have to be on your toes for this group.
Yeah, but I think because of those things, and because they know I'm consistent and I follow through with those things, I think that it's starting to improve. And at the beginning of the year, it was a little bit of lack of responsibility, and student responsibility is now getting better. More assignments are starting to come back, and I'm seeing an increase in that. So,
well, they know you're going to follow through.
Yeah.
And they also know what to expect in each class because of the preparation you've done in advance. So you mentioned that one of the things that you kind of were thinking about or questioning whether you should use the whole video or not in terms of engagement and so forth. Anything else that you are thinking of might be an area for you long-term, short-term, just a growth area for you potentially?
I want to be able to pull small groups at the end, and sometimes I think it depends on the lesson. Sometimes it's more efficient to go around and check in with each student.
Mhm.
But sometimes I don't need to check in with every student because that closure piece actually was my saving grace when everyone was on their iPads and they were asked to do one final problem in that 1, 2, 3 show. There were some students that I thought, I think this one completely
Yeah.
over. And I thought I'd lost them, early on. But then I did that closure piece and that really, that helped me feel more confident in knowing that the lesson went well or better than I expected.
Because there were more kids that had the answer
That they
correct.
knew,
Mhm.
yeah, they had the answer correct and their work was correct. And so definitely want to keep doing that closure piece at the end. That was very helpful for me, and I think it's helpful for students too. It ties it all together at the end. But yeah, I want to get into more small groups and really group kids by needs.
So in your planning conversation, you had said that you were going to give that pre-test, and then you had thought of having them in different groups, and then there were only 2 of them
Yeah,
that actually did. So it turned out to be more of a whole
group.
class
Mhm.
instruction
Yeah.
thing as well.
And that hasn't happened in a while, so I was anticipating more students. Since we've already covered rounding, I thought this will be easy. They'll be able to round, they'll remember rounding, and then they just multiply. But that wasn't the case. A lot of kids were using the strategy from the day before, which is breaking apart. But that gives you the actual answer, and so they were getting rounding and breaking apart confused. So I didn't anticipate that, and the pretest was a great tool for realizing that they do need to see this is the difference. And I will never go back to not pretesting because it has been such a great tool for me, and I can't tell you how many times I assumed I made a prediction, I think these kids will get this, and then that's not the case. So that pretest has been a really great tool. And I changed how I did that. I used to pretest for the whole unit, and then I would sort kids by groups, and that was really hard to manage. First of all, it's another whole test to grade on top of the summative test, and it is harder to keep track of groups and who needs reteaching along the way. So now I pretest for each lesson, like that day.
Okay.
So the lesson that they're gonna get today, and it's only 2 or 3 questions, so I can just sort through yes, no, and it's very to the point. And that's been really,
And that really helps you guide the next day's lesson a lot.
Yes, and I can even tell from those pretests who almost have it and probably just need to be shown a little bit, and then who's really, really off. Like if I see question marks, there's probably vocabulary that they're not understanding and the process. So even those can help me make groups, and I'm gonna try doing it that way as well.
So grouping is a thing that's on your mind right now, and yet if you got these results, you wouldn't have grouped any differently anyway for that particular lesson that I saw, because
Probably not, because so many kids were just getting it confused and needed to see the
so
difference.
you're wanting to try and get to grouping, but not be bound by that if that's not what the group needs.
Mm-hmm. Right.
There was one thing that I noticed, and I may have missed it, so I just wanted to put that down. You shared the choices that people had, and up on the board there was I believe there was the learning outcome, the I can statement up there,
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
But I didn't actually hear you say, and maybe it was in the video, and you would know the video, of what they were actually going to be learning today.
Yes, so that was in the video. It's
Okay.
And then they're hearing it from the slideshow. But that's a great point, because I could be also repeating it as well. And
Well, and I'm wondering if the confusion that kids had with break apart or rounding, estimating, rounding and estimating,
Yeah.
if that might have been clearer than to them if they would have heard it
Yeah.
multiple times.
Yeah. I
Right?
think
It's
so
just
too.
something to think, just
Mhm.
something to think about.
Yeah.
So that's the only area I think that, for you, what might be a next step, given this observation and given the evidence and data that
Well, in math, I think that I'm gonna follow through. Well, I know I'm gonna follow through with the giving more direction instead of just saying talk at your table. I really want to see that be more balanced. So that's one. I want to use that pretest to do some in observations, throughout the lesson, to do groups at the end so that I can see more kids either in a small group setting or individually even. I'm gonna preview that slideshow and be a little more picky about what's the absolute necessary information and is it more fluff than they need. That way we can use our time more effectively. So I think if I could take away 3 things that I'm gonna work on to polish up these lessons in the future, it would be those 3 things.
So if I were to happen to come by in just a walkthrough, one of the things that I could really pay attention to that could support you is when you say turn and talk, do kids know who's supposed to start talking first?
Right.
And that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yes,
Thanks
thank
so
you.
much for doing this
Thank
for
you
us.
for your time.
Yeah. And I will send